screen. I am so excited to be with you guys today. And this is not my, there, can you guys see my screen? Yay, I think I did it. So today we're going to talk, my presentation today is brought from Garland Vance's book, Getting UnBusy. There's a picture of it right there. And I loved this picture that I took last weekend of my blank calendar. Obviously, it was before I started putting stuff on it. But there was something just so calm about that blank page full of new possibilities. So I am glad to be talking to you about this early in the year, when we have an opportunity, barring very many more unprecedented events, to make some choices in what we do this year. I wanted to start with the definition of busyness that Garland put in his book, and I loved it because it really hit home for me. Busyness begins when your commitments exceed your capacity. And so I want you to keep that in mind as we kind of walking through the book, essentially. I'm going to stop and have some spots for questions. There's also going to be some homework at the end of this. So, and maybe a few stops for discussion along the way. So my goals for today are for all of us to realize that we have limited time, energy, and attention. Okay, we have an unlimited God who is beyond space and time. We are limited humans. He has put us in a world where we have limited time, limited energy, and limited attention. What that means is we can do anything we want, but we can't do it all at once. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I am guilty of trying to do it all at once. I need to fix it so I can see more of your faces. I am very guilty of trying to do it all at once. So essentially what we're going to do today is look at some tools so that we can live purposefully, productively, and peacefully within the limitations that God has given us. There are 5 steps to that that Garland has laid out: deciding, deconstructing, designing, developing, and drawing others in. So he's got our alliteration for the day is all D's. And if you ask at the end, I will be glad to send the slides. I saw that picture, Julie. I will be glad to send the slides and we will get them to everybody. They're not exciting. This is this picture of the butterfly that's peaceful and purposeful is the last pretty picture because I may have been overcommitted and ran out of my limited energy, time, and attention. So, decide. Oh, what is it we need to decide? We need to decide whether we're busy or not. Raise of hands, those of you I can see faces of. How many of you, when somebody is asked, how are you, have said, oh, I'm busy, it's just so busy, right? It's almost like our automatic response. And if we were to say, well, you know, I've got lots of free time, we might not feel so good about ourselves. So, but we need to decide whether we're actually busy or not. So the first thing that I want you to know, and this is kind of information, background information, is that when we live in busy and overcommitted beyond our time, energy, and attention limits, we put our bodies under stress. Some of that is good stress. Some of that is bad stress. Our body, our physical body, does not differentiate between the good stress and the bad stress, which is why you are just as exhausted after having a fabulous day with your family maybe not just as, but you're tired after a fabulous day with your family, but you may also be tired after, I don't know, some conflict. When we live busy, where we're overcommitted, we're constantly hurrying, we don't give our body time to recover. We keep our body in stress mode. This is not good for us physically, mentally, emotionally. I don't know about you guys, but my lived experience is that is the worst time for my personal relationships. My boundaries are low. My patience is low. I am not living. You do not see the fruit of the Spirit in me when I am living under constant stress, even if it's good stress. And I'm going to say this for all of you, menopausal, postmenopausal women, it keeps cortisol in our bodies all the time. If we don't let our bodies reset, the cortisol helps us hold on to fat. Now, if you want to talk about weight loss, you talk to Jan Schiller, the other NorthStar life coach. But here's a way to help you help your body. We're going to reduce our stress. The other effects of busyness, some of these you might have experienced, we lose focus. When our list is too long, when we can't complete the commitments we've made, we get distracted. We lose focus. We feel like we're doing a lot, but we're never done. Now, my oldest daughter would tell you that that is the definition of being a mother. But we're doing a lot, we're never done, and we exchange a sense of accomplishment for actually achieving things. An observation, you might have found yourself doing all the easy things on your list first, so that you could check things off. You get that accomplishment, but you may not have been working on your highest priority. So at this point, we kind of need to make a decision. Are you really busy? One way to know, and we're going to look at it more specifically, one way to know is whether you're in the hurry, scurry, worry vortex. You're always hurrying. You don't have time between appointments. You are frantically moving around without a whole lot of focus, and you're constantly worried. So if you decide that you're busy, you have a choice. This life coaching moment number one. You have agency, you have a choice. You can decide that's just the way it is. You can decide, okay, well, maybe I'm busy, but I just need to learn more. Once I learn more, then I can figure out what to do. You can say, okay, I'm busy, but all of these commitments are important, so I'm only gonna get unbusy a little bit at a time. Or you can make a decision, and to kind of go whole hog. Now, my suggestion, and to get unbusy, kind of corral your commitments. If I'm giving advice, I would suggest that scaling back selectively and deciding to get unbusy are good for your health and your productivity. So I'm going to take a minute to look at the chat and see if anybody has any questions. Michelle says you have a choice. Thank you, Michelle. I love that. Because you do. We have a choice. It's not something, and deciding that it's just the way it is a choice that we make. So this is where it kind of gets important, and I want to really share some important stuff. Sometimes our overcommittedness, our busyness, is based on beliefs, things that we tell ourselves, and they may be things that we tell ourselves out of habit. It may be things that, it may be self-talk, it may be just ways we think, maybe part of the way we give into the world. So sometimes we think we need to be more. And if we can say, I'm busy, completely booked, I do not have any white space on my calendar, then we tell ourselves that that means our lives are important. And that, I kind of want to sit there for a second, because sometimes we make commitments so that we can feel valuable. Right? Now, I'm talking, we're all Christians here. We know that we are beloved daughters of God. And we're going to talk about deconstructing the beliefs here in a little bit and kind of breaking them down. But I want to tell you, I want to speak to you guys and say that God delights in you. Many of you are mamas. And even though my kids are grown, I can remember looking at them sleeping peacefully in their beds and just delighting over them. I didn't necessarily delight over them every minute of the day, but I loved to watch them sleep. And God has just really impressed on me in the last 3 or 4 months that he wants to delight in me every minute of the day. He's got that love for me. So I don't have to be more to earn the love of my Father. So as we talk about getting unbusy, I want you to hold that thought in your hearts. So, because you see, once we start thinking we're not valuable if we're not committed to a lot of things, we start thinking that we're not good enough. And so when we think we're not good enough, we think, well, I want to be better. So what can I do to make myself better? So we add more stuff. I need to learn more. I need to do more. And that's kind of the second part. In order to be better, to be more, I need to go do more. I need to take that class. I need to host that party. Once COVID is over, host that actual party. And then in order to do more, I need to have more money, or I need to have better experiences. So we get caught in this belief that to be valuable, we need to be more. We need to replace those beliefs with truth. So in the book, and I don't have a link to this sitting with me, but Garland provides a tool, and it's really just a piece of paper on one side to write down the things that we tell ourselves, the places in our lives where we tell ourselves we need to be more, that we're not enough. And then to look at them, ask ourselves, are those things true? And replace them with true beliefs. Now, this sounds so simple. So very, very simple. It's like making a pro and con list, right? It's easy peasy. I would tell you that this is probably one of the hardest things to do that we're going to talk about today. To really take a minute and figure out why being busy is it, why you're choosing to be busy. I'm going to give you an example, and just an example. You're going to have your own story. We all tell ourselves our own stories. I'm a 2 on the Enneagram. I love to serve people. And when I am not at a healthy place, I serve people so they will love me. So I can easily get caught in the, if I don't say yes to what this person has asked me for, I'm not going to be enough for them to love. And so we're going to talk a little bit later about defending our yeses instead of defending our nos. And I've really had to look at my yeses when I'm saying yes to something to see if I'm trying to earn somebody's love. You all are going to have a different story, but that's mine. Here we go. We have bad habits. A bad habit in our world today is we default to yes and we defend our no. And it goes something like this. My pastor says, can you help organize this event? Can you contact these people? My boss asked me to do an extra task. My automatic answer without thinking is yes. And if I need to say no, I say to my pastor, well, I'm already doing this, this, and this, and I've got this going on and I can't do that. So-and-so would be better. Like I have a big long explanation about why I'm saying no. A habit to replace that with that will help you be unbusy is to remember that no is a sentence. So I know you guys are all muted, but I want you to say the word no with me. 1, 2, 3. No. One more time. No. One of your homework items for this afternoon and over the next couple of days is to practice just saying the word no. When we do say yes to something, we should be able to defend it. Yes, Pastor, I will take on that I will help you organize that event because my purpose and my calling is to connect with neighbors. God has called me this year to connect with neighbors. In the NorthStar Women's Facebook group, Michelle I think it was Michelle, I'm going to give Michelle credit, put out the question and asked if we had a word for the year. And the word that I've taken up for this year is shine. My pastor and I played around with it yesterday, and it might even be the light, which is not one word. But when I say yes to something this year, it should reflect that I should be being the light. It should fit into my purpose. And I should be saying no to things that don't fit into my purpose. That sounds so easy. How many of you have heard that before? Right? Is it easy? The other habits that can be bad habits is when we don't respect our own boundaries. It could be an end of the day boundary. This is when the end of the workday is, and I'm going to go home. I'm going to leave my workplace and be with my family. We are at our house. My husband just took on a new job with some new responsibilities, and this is our first official empty nest year. We have launched the youngest one off into the world to be a teacher. So our end of the day boundaries are terrible right now. My daughter, who is a teacher, has set some beautiful end of the day boundaries. She's like, half an hour after the kids leave, I go home, Mom. I don't know where she learned that, but she's got a beautiful end of the day boundary. She did not learn it from me. How about boundaries around our work days? Now that many of us can work remotely, maybe you're like me and you find that work can start the minute you get out of bed and go until the minute you get out of bed, even though you're home. So finding some boundaries around home time versus work time. When quarantine first started and my husband was working from home for the first time in his life, we We actually made a physical workday boundary. We put our family room as off limits to doing work. When we were in the family room, we were off. And when we were in our offices, we were on. Because what we found the first week or so into quarantine was that we didn't stop working. Ever. And then task boundaries. A task will expand to take the amount of time that you give it. So, maybe sometimes a task boundary will help you get started on a task. If you set a timer for 15 minutes, you might find that depending on the task, you got it done. But some of us, I might be a 2 with a 1 wing, so I like to lean into getting things just right. I can make a task take forever so I can get it just right. This is a place where done is better than perfect falls into. Okay. I got too fast. No, I am. Hold on. Sorry, guys. I went the wrong way. I'm going to stop the share and start over because, that was not my best moment. Okay. There we go. Hold on. Sorry, guys. My technology is obviously... There we go. So here's the other piece of homework. Thank you guys for bearing with my technology inability. So one of the things I said that can get us into the busy is when we don't understand what all we are committed to. And I'm going to say, as women and moms, there may be more commitments that we don't count as part of our commitments than we think. So Michelle's going to post in the chat a link to this form that's on the page. It's from Garland Vance's website. The link is from my Dropbox, but I got this from Garland Vance. And your homework is to sit down. There's 5 steps here. Do them one at a time, not like don't go across, go down. But sit down and identify all your commitments and the amount of time they take. Your women, we're talking about holistically. So you're going to have some home commitments. You're going to have some work commitments. You may have some family commitments. You may have some friend commitments. And into everybody's life, there is laundry and grocery shopping. Amazon Fresh has been my friend. Put that, and the commissary pickup has also been a time saver for me. Once you've made a list, include when you make that list the amount of time it takes. Once you've made that list, maybe let it sit for a day or so, and then come back. And in the column that says feeling, you're going to either put a smiley face, a grumpy face, or a meh face. If the commitment makes you smile, we're going to come back to that, but go through. So for example, things that might fall on my list. We've had a commitment. We have an app that allows us to read books to our grandchildren. And we've committed to 1 night a week, we read books with the grandkids. That commitment gets the biggest smiley face you have ever seen. Grocery shopping does not get a smiley face. Other things fall in between. Don't sit and really, if you really have to think about it, give it a meh face. These should be like quick, yes, I love it. No, I don't, meh. Don't sit on any one thing very long. For every grumpy face or meh face, you get to choose the next action. The next thing you're going to do. For every grumpy face or meh face, you're going to make a choice. Because once again, we put this in the chat earlier, you have a choice. Whoops. Okay, that's what happened. When I pushed the button for the chat, I messed myself up. I'll go back. Okay, hold on. When I pushed the button for the chat, I lost my place. Let me share it again. Oops. Thank you guys for bearing with me. I won't look at the chat again.
I'll keep you posted if there's something that comes up.
Thank you. Who knew? So you can quit it. Grocery shopping is not something I can quit, but there are things on my list that I can quit. Delegate it. In my case, I have delegated grocery shopping to Amazon Fresh because when I make my list, I make it right there, and I've cut out the middleman. I can negotiate it. That might go something, and I'm trying to use home examples, maybe more than work examples, but you could do this at work as well. I don't like to iron. My husband loves to iron. We have negotiated over the years. I do the laundry, he does the ironing. So you have an option if there's a commitment that's really meh or really grumpy, and you have an ability to negotiate it. A work, maybe you have a teammate that really loves spreadsheets and you really love words, and you kind of do some job sharing responsibility wise. You can do some negotiating that way. The other thing, and there are some things that we simply have to accept. So kind of go through that list of commitments, the ones that are grumpy or meh, kind of choose what you're going to do with it. Now, the next step would be to go through and decide, so let's say you decide that you have a commitment. I don't know, you have a commitment to organize meals at church for women who have new babies. And maybe you're in a different life stage and it's hard to find out who has the new babies just because you're in a different life stage. You don't want to just walk in and go, I quit. You want to quit with honor, and you want to honor the commitment you made. So maybe you say, you go and you say, I've got this commitment. I'll do it for the next month. I'm looking for a replacement. So you want to kind of design an honorable way out that honors the commitment. This is not permission to go, I quit, and just give it up, because that's not necessarily healthy. But so you can make a plan to decrease the number of commitments on your list. So now hopefully you've given some things up, you've left some things on. So then it's a matter of choosing how you're going to live and what you're going to put on your plate. So pace and space. Some of you might have enjoyed the word margin. Pace and space, you get to decide your pace, and you get to decide both your physical space and your time space. I'm going to give you an example. Part of the reason I do life coaching and I do the work I do is because I wanted to have time in my schedule to be able to keep my family commitments. For our family, we realized that we both couldn't work 60-hour weeks and love our children well. even as they became young adults. So choosing to do something where I am working for myself was designed to give us space and margin in our family calendar. Pace. So we all got to go to work from home back last March. I no longer had to drive between appointments. Here was the lesson I learned the hard way. I needed to leave 15 minutes between appointments, because after a couple days of back-to-back-to-back webinars and Zooms, I realized I needed to go to the bathroom. Honesty, right? I see that. I see that, Wanda. I see that thumbs up. But that's not just true when we're talking Zoom webinars. We need to give ourselves margin for the child that calls because they've had a bad day. We need to give ourselves margin for the coworker who lost their mom. We need to give ourselves margin so that we have room to be light. Now, be the light, shine is kind of my word for this year. But when we don't give ourselves margin, sometimes we miss the things that God puts in our lives. There are 4 things that we really need to make sure that we build into our life design. We need room for relationships, family, friends. We need room for recreation, because that's where we re-energize ourselves. That's where we get one of the places we get our bodies out of stress. We need room for rest. This means actually getting enough sleep. Maybe it means taking a nap in the middle of the afternoon. And we need room for reflection. Because without reflection, we can get off track and we can lose our heading toward our purpose. When my husband was, gosh, you guys are hearing a lot about my husband today. Sorry, that's the way it works. But when my husband was first in the Air Force, he flew satellites. And what that meant was they monitored the track of the satellite. And if it was veering off course a little bit, they would send a command to fire a rocket here or fire a rocket there to keep it on its appropriate trajectory. Reflection, which I personally always do in conjunction with God. That's a place where I do my reflection when I'm spending time with God, because I want him to keep me on path. Reflection is what keeps us achieving our purpose rather than just accomplishing tasks. Oh, so I guess I have two slides with the same thing on it. There you go. Done, not perfect, right? I want to point you to under recreation. Garland Vance gave us on page 111 of the book, he gave us a list of 8 different ways that we play or we recreate. I am an explorer and creator. That's one of the ways I recreate. I'm trying to think, there was a book that I read recently. Oh, it was the Dallas Willard book that we read for the forum last Saturday. And one of the things I took away was that God plays. That God finds delight and God plays. And if he plays, then I should play too. So that was one of my takeaways. So realize how you play. Maybe you like to read books. Maybe you're, whatever you do, make sure you build that in. I think I've already talked about most of these things. Now we get to the reflection part. Dreams versus priorities. A dream is a long-term desire that does not have a plan or a deadline yet. You want to go ahead and write those down so that you don't lose them. But you don't want to try and put a plan or a deadline to every dream. You put a plan or a deadline to every dream, you are not going to achieve, you're not going to achieve anything. So, and Garland suggested every quarter to select 2 to 4 priorities, which is a dream that you're willing to sacrifice for so that you accomplish it. And it's a dream that's got a priority and a timeline. So for example, my youngest daughter started teaching in Pensacola last August, and we moved her down there in July. When we got back, I realized that I had the quarantine 15 because we had baked a lot of bread and eaten a lot of yummy food. And I put down one of my priorities for the fall was more muscle, less mom. Now, the goal was not necessarily about losing weight, but it was about being strong enough to be able to keep up with my 3-year-old granddaughter, who takes life at full steam and only has 2 speeds, full and asleep. I needed to be cardio fit and muscular so I can keep up with her on the playground, and she can't outrun me, because when she's running the direction she shouldn't be running, I need to be able to catch her. So what that meant was in the fall, I gave up some things so I could prioritize exercise and eating right. But I didn't just try and add that on top of all the other things. So I chose just a couple of things to determine what's a priority, and then I blocked time, effort into each day. I didn't try and accomplish everything. And I think sometimes as women, we try to put everything on our list at once. Maybe I'm making an assumption there. Maybe you guys are better than I am, but that's definitely. Okay. You want to think about your calendar proactively. Block time for those core 4 things: relationships, recreation, rest, and reflection. Block times for your priorities and set your boundaries. Now, to do this, you can use all kinds of things. I use a Panda planner. It's a particular brand of planner. It's got a spot for gratefuls, things I'm excited for, big wins for the day. It's got a spot to plan a quarter and plan a week. Another good option is an Ink and Volt planner, which has a place again for the quarterly and weekly. It's also got a spot to review your goals and dreams. You may use you might have a vision board for a quarter and have a big piece of poster board to keep in front of you what you need to do. You might use a Google Calendar. Any of those tools work, but you have to use them. You can't just write stuff in them and put stuff down and hope for the best. You need to build in that margin. I'm coming off a week where maybe I didn't build in my margin. So I'm going to say really strongly, you need to build in that margin. Give yourself time in between. And as Christians, we're called, it says Sabbath here, but we're called to rest with God and spend time with him. In this season of my life, we are taking an almost 24-hour Sabbath, as my husband and I try every weekend. But you need to build in that time with God. All right. So next step, write it down. Your brain is not designed to remember everything. If you have a sheet of paper, or a notebook that you keep notes in, or maybe a sticky note pad, and you write it down, like a place that you table those thoughts. You're in the middle of working on a project. You're in the middle of putting together a PowerPoint for a presentation. You're in the middle of writing a book, and you think about, I need to send the deposit for this, and I need to buy eggs at the grocery store. You need a place to write that deposit and the eggs down. So your brain goes, oh, I've written it down. I can rest now, and you can focus on what you're getting done. The more we try and hold everything in our brain, the more anxious we get. So particularly if you're feeling anxious, but good habits to develop in terms of getting an unbusy mind is to do a brain dump. A brain dump is when, I usually do these about once a week. I go through and make a list of absolutely everything I need to get done. A whiteboard's a good place to do a brain dump, but just sit down with a couple pieces of paper. If you are feeling overwhelmed, do a brain dump. It is one of the best ways to kind of go, oh, wait, maybe either, oh, wait, I have way too much to do, or oh, wait, maybe it's not as bad as I thought. I strongly suggest a notebook or something that you can keep notes in so you remember I need to buy eggs at the store or whatever. I also strongly suggest, and again, in the book, Garland suggests to process things daily. So build in a time at the end of the day or the beginning of the day where you kind of go, okay, yes, I'm on track. Here are these 3 things I thought of yesterday. I need to put them on my to-do list for tomorrow. Over the Christmas holiday, I have met with several clients, both right before Christmas and right after Christmas, where we actually spent an hour making their list of doing their brain dump and doing this processing, because they were so overwhelmed they couldn't sit down and do it by themselves. Sounds kind of funny. They paid me to do that with them. And at the end of it, they were able to move forward and get done what they needed to get done. The other thing that we often don't do is accept our constraints. We can get busy, meaning that we are overcommitted beyond our time, attention, and capacity when we deny the reality of commitments in our lives. For example, if you have an elderly parent that you need to take care of, or that's the one I'm thinking of off the top of my head, that's the one that I'm thinking of the most. He uses in the book, he uses an example of somebody having their elderly parents move in and needing to spend time with them. If you have a new baby in the house, or maybe you have a teenager in the house, making sure you accept the constraint that you're going to need to give them time and effort. It could be that there's a job that you have to do something in your job that takes a lot of time. My previous job, I had a whole lot of data entry I needed to do. I would try and do everything but that data entry. And I would always, because it was boring, I would always overcommit. So you need to know the difference between movable and unmovable constraints. So some constraints we choose, but some constraints are imposed, like the teenager that's living in your house. And just know whether you can negotiate it, whether you can move it. Maybe there's a commitment that I wanted to make at the beginning of the year that I can move to the next half. Maybe it's my child's senior year, and by the way, senior year is crazy. So I know I can wait and do that commitment in the fall. The way you know how you have a commitment or a constraint that you may not be accepting is you may be using the words, if only I didn't have to do this. If only is kind of a clue that you might need to stop and reassess that. I've talked way too much, but I'm almost done. Reflect. I call this weekly planning. I do this about once a week. What's coming up? Have I blocked time for the good stuff? What could I do? What should I do? What must I do? And I usually only put 2 or 3 things on the must-do list. But it's kind of a pre-planning for the week to help prevent me from getting busy. I'm looking at the time and I want to give you a chance for questions. Morning routines are good. Choose stuff that helps you. Oh, tame your transitions. Give yourself it's time to leave for work. Leave work at the end of the day. Give yourself a 15-minute timer so that you have a chance to kind of transition. If you could do a whole lot of the same kinds of things, batch your work so that you're not going back and forth between different things. This is the last slide. Tell your family that you have committed to being UnBusy. Tell people that you're committing to being UnBusy. For your family, you might choose to do things together. You might choose being together over to do. It might be kind of lonely to tell your friends that you're going to be UnBusy. But you can accept that they're going to be busy and you're choosing not to be. You can invite them into being UnBusy with you. And with that, I am done screen sharing. I talked way too much. And I have a question. Wanda said, I'm looking at the questions. Wanda, I loved your question. What if your designated day of rest has now become full of Zooms? And I have said no, but I still find my designated day full. That's a great question. It depends on what those Zooms are. So our designated day of rest has been Sundays or Saturdays. We had to make an adjustment in our designated time of rest because we found that between 3:30 and 6:30 on Sunday afternoon, our children have decided that that is when they should call us. There was no, hey mom, they just like the boom, 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 boom. There's no schedule to those Zooms, they just appear. Once we found the pattern, we adjusted a little bit. But it also could be that you might have to be creative with your Sabbath. I don't know. So Wanda, it's hard for me to tell what Zooms you've got. You may have to be creative with when you schedule your Sabbath if the Zooms are unavoidable. I know that our church has tried not to schedule a whole lot of Zooms on Sundays. We do virtual church, and that's really about it that's scheduled on Sunday. Sunday school and a virtual Sunday school and a virtual church, so that people can be home with their families. But it's hard to kind of address that question without knowing what the Zooms are. Anything else I missed?
So Beth, I got a text message from somebody asking about when you were talking about being creative and playing.
Mm-hmm.
Did that come out of a book? Is there like different ways to figure out what playing? It came out of that book.
It came out of this book, page 111, if you
Okay.
read the book. And now that I can not looking at that, I can give you, he identifies the following. The Joker, they get energy by silliness. Kinesthetic people who like to move. Explorers who like to see new places, new ideas, new subjects, new emotions, new points of view. Competitors, they want to win the game. My son-in-law, I have a son-in-law who is a competitor all the way through. Directors, people who enjoy planning and executing events and or organizing other people and or throwing a party or planning a trip. Collectors, they might collect ideas or objects. Creators, paint, garden, sculpt, needlework, and storytellers. Those were his 8. I think you might find some other things, you know, but if you sit and think about it, and I think I've been different things at different times. But if you sit and think about it, you can think about what just brings you joy.
Exactly. Yeah. What brings you delight?
What brings you delight? Like if you wanted to say to a friend, if I was to say to Michelle, hey, let's go play, I'm thinking she would probably come up with a trip or something for us to go explore. Just knowing Michelle, right? Wanda, I see I'm going to go back to Wanda's question. Church support group and personal business ventures. Yeah, it's hard. Those are all good things. You may have to find another place to do Sabbath if there's no other time for those things, for the Zooms. Other questions, thoughts? I have talked way more than I'm used to talking. So coaches usually ask questions and other people do the talking. I don't think I've talked this long.
It's been good.
All right, so anybody want to share something that really stood out to them before we finish up here? Okay.
I'll just say that, you know, when you said about like people have their different ways of what delights them. So Michelle might go exploring, y'all might go find a path somewhere in the woods. But for me, like a recent thing that I did was I got my new calendar. And so I was filling out, you had to put the blanks, in the months, you had to put the actual dates in. So I did that. I texted all of my siblings. I mean, y'all know I have like 17 siblings. So I'm just trying to find out birth dates for some of their kids and anniversaries for them. And so it was just fun to be able to put those dates on the calendar. I mean, I enjoy that kind of thing. That's, you know, sitting there and just doing that kind of paperwork for me is kind of exciting. It's the planning. Yeah.
So that's what I had to say. I will say that I'm going to go back and tell you that those beliefs about not being enough, I don't want you to just go, oh, I can change that. That's one I really want you guys to look at and to really take a look at your commitments. Those are my challenges to you. We didn't lose Katie. She just, Zoom moved everybody. All the faces moved.
Yeah.
So I'd
Beth,
like to,
could you hold your book up? Could you hold the book up so everybody can see that? It's a great book. I have it as well. If you know, you can get it. It's a rather new book. Garland put it out not too long ago, and he actually came and spoke to our NorthStar staff like about a year and a half ago when he was still in the process of writing it, finishing the manuscript. So I'd really encourage you, if you want to get it, you can get it like on Amazon. Just pick it up there.
and it's an easy read. It's not a difficult read. I want to take a second to plug 2 things that I'm doing as a NorthStar life coach. Starting next Thursday, I'm going to do a 3-week session on exploring habits. So if out of this you have decided you need to change a habit or want to create a new habit, I'm going to do a 3-week class on exploring habits. And out of that, you will walk away. I will not talk this much. There will be much more discussion. And you'll walk away with a plan, and it's free. And the other thing I'm looking to do is to collect 6 women leaders to do a mastermind, to meet once a month to talk about challenges in ministry and to build each other up. And if you would be interested in doing that, let me know, let Michelle know, let Katie know, and they'll get get your names to me. Those are, and neither of those, there's no cost for either of those things. That's part of my work with the NorthStar women. With that, I'm done.
So ladies, thank you so much for being here today. We're just always so grateful to be able to gather with you. And of course, to regather after the holidays has really been a blessing. And in a couple of weeks, we will be having a counselor on with us who will be sharing. And so look forward to that and see what else Michelle shares. I think she shares about Beth's 2 classes in the newsletter that will be coming out this week. And there'll be some other information about some other classes coming up. Michelle, do you want to go ahead and close us up with prayer?
Sure. Yeah. Father, I just thank you for just for this time that we could get away from our busy lives and see what you have to say about being busy. And thank you for the practicality of what Beth has shared with us, for just practical tips that we can take in helping ourselves to become unbusy. And I pray that as we get off of this call and we are just encouraged and inspired to take action steps in this process, that we would share it with our friends, with our family, and that they would also be encouragers to us, that they would help us to set boundaries, to have margin in our lives, to be able to say no to great things that are asked of us. And so, Father, I just pray that together as a community, that we would be able to encourage one another and spur one another on, and that you would indeed just give us great success in living unbusy lives. Thank you again for Beth. Thank you for the technology. And thank you for each woman who's joined us today. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
And thank you, ladies. We'll see you in a couple weeks.